Fox News alert, a deadly shooting at an ICE facility in Dallas this morning. The FBI confirming 2 people were shot and the gunman taking his life afterward. The FBI also confirming they found unused bullet casings engraved with the phrase anti-ICE into it. No ICE officers were harmed. FBI Director Kash Patel says these politically motivated attacks are not a one-off, and the targeting of law enforcement officers has to end. Here's Texas Senator Ted Cruz, who spoke moments ago at the scene.
This needs to stop. Violence is wrong. Politically motivated violence is wrong. It was 2 weeks ago today that we saw a political assassination in Utah that tore the heart out of much of this country. This is the 3rd shooting in Texas directed at ICE or CBP. This must stop. Look, in America, we disagree. That's fine. That's the democratic process. But your political opponents are not Nazis. We need to learn to work together without demonizing each other, without attacking each other. Violence has no place. It is wrong. And we should come together. If we want to have a debate about immigration policies, we can do so in the halls of Congress without demonizing each other, and especially without demonizing the men and women who every day put on a badge and go risk their lives to keep us safe.
Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Emily Campagno here with my co-host, Kayleigh McEnany. And also joining us today, Molly Line, Fox News correspondent, Kennedy, host of the Kennedy Saves the World podcast, and Bill Hemmer, co-anchor of America's Newsroom. Now let's go live to Brooke Taylor on the ground there in Dallas, Texas, with the latest on this tragic story. Brooke.
Hi, guys. Yeah, officials just wrapped up that press conference, and really the biggest takeaway for me was the fact that these anti-ICE shell casings were found near the shooter, because there were a lot of questions about who was the target during this attack. I believe we probably have that picture here that the FBI shared where you could see the words anti-ICE engraved in one of those shell casings there. So this is up. We're getting new updates by the minute, but I'll break it down for you what we know so far. So the shooter, police say, was at a building next to this ICE facility, started firing into an unmarked van, and we're told from officials that 3 detainees inside of that van were shot at. One of the detainees died, and then the gunman turned the gun on himself, and he was shot and killed as well. Officials during this press conference spoke a lot about the rhetoric surrounding ICE agents, how it has to stop, or you have something like this happen. Take a listen to what they said during this press conference.
This is the 2nd time I've had to stand in front of you and talk about a shooter at one of my facilities, and I think that the takeaway from all of this is that the rhetoric has to stop. There are people out there who are seeing what is being placed online, and they're coming and they're doing acts of violence against ICE employees. So that's kind of all I have for today, is that it's just got to stop. It's dangerous, and people are losing their lives.
And officials say that no ICE agents or officers were hurt in this shooting, while, again, the shooter had these anti-ICE messages on the bullets. Instead, he ended up shooting 3 of these detainees. Again, one of them has died. And I just want to mention, at the same ICE facility, there was a bomb threat last month. And then 2 months ago, right here in Texas, nearby at a separate ICE facility, there was an ambush against officers where one officer was shot and thankfully survived that, guys.
Brooke Taylor, thank you so much. Bill Hemmer, I want to read what the FBI director posted on X earlier this morning. I mentioned it earlier, and it bears worth noting at the top here. These despicable, politically motivated attacks against law enforcement are not a one-off. He says we are only miles from Prairieland, Texas, where just 2 months ago, an individual ambushed a separate ICE facility targeting their officers. It has to end, he says. And the FBI and our partners will lead these investigative efforts to see to it that those who target our law enforcement are pursued and brought to the fullest extent of justice. Now here, obviously, the gunman took his own life. We will not be having a criminal justice closure, but at the end of the day, these attacks have to stop, and there has to be deterrence to do so.
I would just caution all of us, folks at home, we are so early into this story. We don't have a name. We don't have a picture. We have an ID, the alleged gunman who apparently was dead on a rooftop in Dallas. We have an indication of a motive, but let's see if we can dig a little deeper here. What feels at the moment, if all this continues to go in the trend that it currently is, it feels like a copycat move. It feels like, you know, there is a trend that is moving that direction that sort of drafts off the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And whether or not that continues to be the case, we don't know. Look, they haven't answered many questions in Utah. They haven't answered many questions in Butler, PA from a year ago. There's a lot of things we do not know. There are psychiatrists now diving into why you would engrave anything on a shell casing if indeed you did not survive, or even if you did survive, that would go to motivation there. And you know, viewers at home, you can look it up yourself, you can Google it and go find it. But what was written in Utah sort of leaves this trail and leaves this message, and it's a sick and demented mind there. School shootings have been so prominent in America for more than a decade that some really smart people are writing about why you would do something like this if it continues to go this way. And the sick psychology suggests that a school shooting is no longer as significant as it used to be. Think about that if that's the case. You have to go so far as to leave a message or a meme that would be picked up by your own loyal followers so they could look to you, this little group, wherever they are and how many they are, look to you as a hero of the moment. That's a really dark place. I think what Ted Cruz said there is your political opponents are not Nazis. Like, where does it go? How do we stop this? What do we say? Most of the White House officials went dark for now because they're trying to figure out the answers. And Dana and I were on the air for 2 hours watching this, and we could see it in real time. They didn't close up shop, but they were just like, hang on, let's get our act together here. There's going to be a major news conference at some point today, and it's going to take us, potentially, ladies, down another one of these dark holes, which is where we were just about 2 weeks ago in Utah. And I don't know where that ends.
Prevalence normalizes, Kaylee. Prevalence of rhetoric, demonizing your opponent, your political party. Prevalence of horrific shootings normalizes. Where do we go from here?
Emily, you're exactly right. This demonization of ICE needs to stop. Just last night, Governor Gavin Newsom sat on late night television and said these are authoritarian actions, talking about ICE. Jasmine Crockett, September 25th, said they are slave patrols, okay? Slave patrols. Governor Walz, modern day Gestapo is what he called ICE. Pritzker said with these ICE raids, we're essentially becoming Nazi Germany. Jayapal said they were deranged. Dan Goldman said they were the secret police. Swalwell, KGB officer in Russia. There are other lesser-known elected officials on the left who said they were kidnappers, vigilantes, thugs. I could do the entire 51 minutes left of this show going over what ICE has been called again and again and again. Now, we know there's things we know, there's things we don't know. We know anti-ICE was written on the bullet. But the one thing I know with certainty is this rhetoric must end, because this attack is not in isolation. September 14th, there was an ICE officer who was ran over with a car. September 12th, dragged from a car, an ICE officer. September 1st, there was a protest of ICE with a guillotine at the protest. August 25th, arrested a suspect with bomb threats on a Dallas ICE facility. Again, we could list the violence against ICE for the entirety of this show. Stop demonizing hardworking law enforcement. They are brave. They are doing God's work. They are protecting people who could lose their life in any given city at any given time because an illegal alien crossed the border illegally and commits violence. Stop demonizing them. They are heroes. And today, this very much looks like, look at that, anti-ICE on a bullet.
The horrific pattern that we've been seeing play out, Kennedy, the same demonization of our president that has resulted in 2 attempted assassinations and potentially more that we don't know about, thwarted earlier, Charlie Kirk's assassination, and now these anti-ICE. I fear for the one that's successful. And it was successful for the families of those dead individuals right now. They may not have been ICE officers, but the target remains, and that's still a loss of life.
Yeah, and their lives are still precious. And that's a thing that we have lost sight of, is our humanity. And not everyone, because I think most people look around at this and they just ask themselves, how did we get here? Like, what am I supposed to tell my children? How am I going to comfort my kids so they feel safe going out into this world where there could be people among them who are seemingly normal on the surface, but then below the surface, they are being radicalized, in these small groups that Bill talked about. And, you get to a scary point where it feels like there is a great deal of instability, and you look around and you wonder, what's next? I don't want the next. And I understand why the White House isn't saying anything today, because a lot of people who knew Charlie Kirk, people who were moved by Charlie Kirk, people who had never seen a video of his until he was assassinated, they're still trying to process this. Like, it is too fresh. And, we look what happened in the aftermath of Luigi Mangione and the murder of the United Healthcare CEO. And, he was lionized essentially as a saint by some. And there are some very sick people who are deranged, they're mentally ill, they have been radicalized, they are narcissistic, and they look at the fallout from that and they say, that's what I want. That is not what I want. That is not what most people want. We don't want to live in a society like this, because that is not a difference of opinion. That is a murderous cult that does irreparable harm, and we have to figure out a way to stop it, because words are not violence, but right now words are not enough, and we have to do something else.
In the wake of the Charlie Kirk shooting, the governor there, Spencer Cox, talked about how this was an attack on all of us. And I view it the same way, particularly an attack on free speech, an attack on religion, an attack on abilities to gather together and talk about what clearly needs to be talked about. And this raises that point yet again. And the intentions of people, the political violence that everyone is speaking out against now and standing up against, the victims, the ultimate victims, may not ever be the intended target of someone's problematic mind. They can be the other people in the surrounding area. In this case, we may potentially find the grieving families of potential detainees. In the case of the attack on President Trump, Corey Kemper-Torrey in Butler, Pennsylvania, killed there. If we can't gather together and talk, whether it's in a big political stand or just to live in society, we're going to end up with a lot of these types of challenges. And ICE, as we've talked about throughout the morning, the motivations of this particular individual on the ground in Texas, ICE has to deal with what's happening around them in that moment. They're not thinking necessarily about the motive of this person, but saving lives and neutralizing a threat in that moment. And yet they're dealing with this problematic situation that is popping up, and they have to determine on the ground in a moment, is this a rioter that we're dealing with? Is this a protester? And that was the challenge with the other attack that happened on July 4th. The people that were involved in that, who the government says had some tactical gear, there were shots fired, there was a police officer shot. Now some of those people that are in that case are arguing that they were just protesters. So in the moment, out there on the streets, we need to remember that ICE is dealing with what they can see around them, whether it's at a facility that is an identifiable tie to ICE or out on the streets of America where they're trying to do their job.
This is why Jimmy Kimmel needed to say, I'm sorry. And he didn't. And he needs to.
Yep.
And he needs to call Erica Kirk and talk to her. And he needs to go on his program and say, I had this lovely conversation with this grieving widow, and this is what we discussed. I mean, that's the proper way you manage this, and that did not happen yet.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.